So I'm going to give you a little bit of background. Ellen led Dupont from 2009 to 2015. And when she took over in 2009, it was January 1st, 2009, right? You had been named in the fall.
Yeah,
right?
President October 1st and
right.
CEO January.
Imagine October 1st, 2008. Many of us were with us. Many of us were together here when the world was falling apart in 2008. Ellen took over as CEO in 2009, right? Okay, January 1st. And amidst, sort of shoring DuPont up amidst the financial crisis, she restructured the company dramatically, cut costs, recast the businesses to focus much more on higher profit margin businesses, improved the profit margins dramatically, got the stock up way, way, way above the performance of the S&P over 6 years. Over those, from 2009 to 2015. And then Nelson Peltz comes along and decides she's not doing enough. The returns could be even better. The costs could be even more, the cost cutting could be even more radical. Before we get to fighting with the activists, I want to ask you, what did you learn about changing a company? What is it this year? 214 years old this year, DuPont? Changing a 214-year-old company that had a very entrenched culture.
Mm-hmm. Successful companies are the hardest to change. Because they look at the past as being what made them perfect. And you have to create a compelling vision. So where are you going? It's not that just change is good for change's sake. It's that you have to create a view to the future that makes them want to come with you. And so we were adding biotechnology to chemistry and advanced materials in order to feed the world, to protect people in the environment. So we created compelling pathways for our science to really not only help the world, but create shareholder value. And, it's a long process. It is not one and done. It's years, and you have to keep after it.
And you had most of your investor base behind you. Mm-hmm. So it must, when did Nelson Peltz first appear?
The middle of 2013.
Middle of 2013. So it must have been a bit of a surprise to you that he came along and said, this isn't enough.
I think we had watched very clearly what was going on out there with activists in the world. We knew we had some things of great strength. We knew we had some areas where we still had issues that we had to deal with it. So we started preparing. The one thing you need to do for any of these things is kind of look at yourself as an activist would look at you. And prepare. And we spent a lot of time out with shareholders even before he showed up. So we had a very good relationship with them. Mm-hmm. So we had preparations underway when he mentioned us on a Seeking Alpha conference or something like that. And it just started the process.
And Ellen fought a long proxy battle and won this proxy battle.
I did.
And yeah. Yeah. And it's like running a political campaign, isn't it?
Yeah.
With
yeah.
Your
but there are no victory laps in this kind of thing, right? You just keep driving, the company. But it was like having two jobs for those 2 years.
Yeah. So, and then he came back. Mm-hmm. And he threatened another proxy fight. And take us inside your head.
As a leader, you are always in service to the company. And every action you should take should always be understanding, how does this make the company stronger? How does it make it better? And he very much made me the issue. And I felt at that point in time that I was getting in the way of the future of the company. That, and it wasn't fair to the company, it wasn't fair to the people. And at that point, at some point when you're fighting these fights, you lose your joy of it. And these jobs are hard. And you really have to have that joy to get out of bed at 5 o'clock every morning and to do what we do. So it just seemed like I was the lightning rod. And at that point, the best thing for the company was to make a change.
So he had put two of his people on your board, right?
Well, we didn't think so at the time.
Okay.
But
all right. Okay.
Long story.
Okay. Yeah. We don't want to get too deep into this, but I want to ask you, Ellen, what your experience says about corporate governance in general, and whether we're going to be on a board session together during the concurrent session, but how does having gone through what you went through make you think differently, if at all, about the way boards work?
I think there's certainly, activism has its place. There are certainly opportunities and activists who act in concert with companies. It's not always as combative. I think boards have to be very realistic about what their prospects are and understand short-term, midterm, long-term, what can all the constituents, the stakeholders expect. Not only the shareholders, but, as we at Dupont, we really, as running, high hazard processes, we had to engage the community. We had to do it on multiple things. I think focus solely on short-term and short-termism is a problem.
Yeah.
Because I think then all you're doing is break up, recombine, break up, recombine. That doesn't create any value except for bankers and lawyers.
Right.
And so truly boards have to think about what does create long-term sustainable value and be realistic.
Is there anything you could have done proactively with your board to prevent this from happening?
I think that, our situation, I think, was unique in many ways because it was made to be very personal. I do think that our board acted with great focus on the future of the company. And, I'm very proud of the board, and we didn't always agree. Believe me, we had some very good, strong debates, but I think that's good. And I think you need to have a board that's willing to question and willing to focus and then support. And clearly throughout the entire fight, they were very supportive and did a great job out with our shareholders. But I think boards have to have that open, transparent ability to discuss and debate. It's just not, do what the company says or what I wanted to do as the CEO and chair, because you have them because of their experience, their background, their depth of knowledge, and they bring a lot to the table. And CEOs need to use that.
And this is a little bit sensitive, but I want you to answer honestly. You had come to the conclusion that you looked at yourself and you thought, I'm the problem. The board came to that conclusion.
Well, we all did. Absolutely. Yeah. We all looked at it and said, look, we know where this story's going.
Yeah.
And a second proxy fight was in the interest of nobody.
Right.
And, we could debate whether he really would have done it or not, but it wasn't in the interest of our employees, our shareholders, of anyone.
Who has questions or comments? No one yet? There's one back here, yes.
I can see nobody wants to be in my situation. There's a surprise.
Well, I think that the situation that you experienced did give rise to a question as to whether or not women CEOs tend to get more targeted by activist investors. And I'm curious as to whether you have an opinion about that.
Well, it doesn't feel like it at the time. You know what I mean? I mean, you can look at the statistics, and I'm just one tree in the forest, and you can look at the forest and draw your own conclusions. But, the jobs that we're asked to take many times are tough jobs. You're running a company in the middle of a global financial crisis. You have to restructure it, sell divisions, buy. And so there are a lot of tough things that women CEOs have been asked to take on, have taken on and done phenomenally well with. If it makes us a target, that's part of life. But I think that you just can't view it that way. You just got to keep driving and focusing on continuing to make the business a better thing.
Yes, Alan.
Is he allowed to?
I thought it was Alan.
I didn't think he was allowed to ask the question.
Yes.
Alan,
And
we can
I
share
don't
the
know if
mic
anybody
if you
said it
want.
earlier, but
Okay.
please identify yourself when you ask a question.
Thanks. Colette LaForce, I'm a Chief Marketing Officer. Ellen, when you made that decision to step down for the good of the business, what was the reaction from the other women inside of DuPont? I know for the rest of us, we all cried a silent or not so silent tear, but what was the impact inside the company?
It was very humbling for me because there was a lot of outpouring by not only the women but the men in the company because we had been through a lot of wars together. This is a team where when you go through something like that, you have to have a team that you still like at 3 o'clock in the morning. When you're really tired and just at each other, you just have to still like them. And we had a very strong team. We had I brought in a lot of high-level women into the organization in order to renew. And that was the hardest part, the people side of it.
Yes, over here.
Kay Koplowitz. Ellen, great admiration for your entire battle. I like everybody else in the room, probably followed it, but intimately. But I wonder, is there a piece of advice you would give to CEOs and others in the room when you were in the battle? Is there something that you learned either about yourself or about that you can share with us that would give people courage to fight on, to really go the course? Because long-term vision for companies is a lot of times hard to support out there in the marketplace when activists are after you. Love to learn from your experience.
So one of the things is one of my advisors, a phenomenal person, Joel Frank, who was very instrumental in getting my head in the right place a lot of times when it just wasn't, would whisper in my ear, if it feels good, don't do it.
Wow.
Very disappointing, I might add, because there were a lot of things that I really wanted to do, but I didn't. And she was absolutely right. When they go low, we go high. You didn't deal with it on their level. And, and I had a really strong team who wanted to defend and wanted to that, but we played it. We didn't go on CNBC. We didn't do that route. We took it to our shareholders.
Yeah.
And very clearly focused on the shareholders.
And this went low. You found at one point that they were going through your garbage.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, yeah. Full-page ads in the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal saying what a terrible person I was. Wait until your adult children call you and say, Mom, why are you on page A6? It's like, yeah, not for a good reason, What have you done? Anyway.
Yes, back here.
Good morning. Janice Ulig from General Motors. Ellen, as you look back on the experience, would you have kept the chair and CEO role together, or do you think the outcome would have been different if they had been apart?
I don't think that had anything to do with it. We had a very strong director in Sandy Cutler. He was a real partner through the entire thing. He was there. He took the time, and so I don't believe that was an issue at all.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Hi. Hello, Ellen. Julie Sweet with Accenture. Maybe just switching from the actual experience, but you were one of the great CEOs that really led, and as the first shareholder vote showed it, really led the company through a major transformation. And so just to have the advantage to hear from you, as you led that transformation, because many of the companies in this room, we are going through big transformations. I'd love to hear your advice for those of us in the room, particularly for major big companies who are dealing with, cultures and that, sort of your best advice for those of us facing these transformations.
I think you have to have your team with you. It's all about the team and the talent. And you've got people who are well entrenched in the organization. You have new people. And they have to be all kind of singing from the same hymnal. You can't have one that walks out the door and says to his buddies, well, I don't believe in that. Or whatever. You have to have that. And sometimes that means you have to do very difficult things. That you have to change people, or you got to call them on the carpet and be very direct with them. If they can't support it, they got another choice to make. And I found that in the beginning, that was probably where I spent most of my time, was getting a team and getting a team aligned around a future that meant that we had to do some pretty hard things.
Ellen spent practically her entire career at Dupont. She was at GE early on in her career, but you said at one point, I know, talking about an entrenched culture at a 200-year-old company. You first need to honor it in order to change
You
it.
do.
What does that mean?
So when you come into a new culture, you come from GE to a Dupont, and you go in and you basically tell people, well, that's not the way we did it at GE, or that's not the way we did it. You're basically telling them they're stupid. And they don't like to be told they're stupid. And so what you have to do is listen and learn and understand what's good about the culture and honor it and say, wow, you guys do that really well. And it is. And that's something we want to double down on and not change. But gee, if we change these couple of things over here, think of how much better it would be. You want to pull them in and help them to be part of that solution by honoring what they do well. And I tell you, they'll follow you anywhere. In a culture like DuPont, they'll follow you anywhere as long as they feel like they have a voice, they've been heard, and they're going to be part of the solution with you. And it's a really important part about culture change, and it does take quite a bit of time.
So a year.
Yeah.
Your life changed a year ago this week. How's it going?
I sleep in more. I don't get up at 5 a.m. and work out. I get up later. It's interesting because it happened quickly, so I was not prepared. Mm-hmm. So, by the way, other piece of advice, think about these things. And so I did a lot of wandering around. Ann Mulcahy gave me the best advice. If you choose one thing before you've been out 6 months, you're a fool. You just, go learn, understand. And I did. I did a lot of wandering around. And there were times that were difficult, like, nobody loves me. The phone's not ringing. And there are other times when everybody hits you. I had a project that I started before I left, which is about women. And it's called Paradigm for Parity. Look it up. Paradigm, the number 4, parity. It is, a group of CEOs, directors, academics. How do you get more women measurably into leadership positions by 2030? So it's long enough, but short enough. Know your baseline. Increase your intake. Absolutely create programs internally on that middle, which is the issue. And I find so many times people don't even understand that they're promoting men at a higher rate than women, so why are they surprised that they have more women than men? And we're getting CEOs of companies to sign up. We're not public yet. We will be.
When will you be public? Because I've gotten a few emails.
Yeah, and I don't know exactly the date. In the next 6 weeks kind of thing.
But it's kind of based on the idea that the 30% club is not enough, right?
Well, because you have to, right, and you have to fill the pipeline inside the companies in order to be able to fulfill 30% or 40%.
That is a huge issue.
So, absolutely.
Make these board candidates viable candidates by giving them the experience they need.
But if you give CEOs 15 years to get there, they'll sign up for short-term. I'm going to make this much progress in the next 5 years. And you've got to make it so that, again, honor them for what they do. And all companies are at a different place, but then work with them with a toolkit, things like that, for how they make real progress.
Ellen is also on the United Technologies board. You're on a board. We have to wrap up, but I want to ask you about Carbon 3D, which is a company that Alan Mulally, former CEO of Ford, brought you into the board. And what does Carbon 3D do?
3D printing company. There's a TED Talk on it. Look it up. It's phenomenal technology. There's a liquid polymer, and you pull the part out of the liquid based on UV light and a lot of technology. And it's an engineer's dream. And it actually has the prospects of going into sort of mid-range manufacturing quantities at a cost that's relevant. So taking 3D printing out of prototyping and putting it into manufacturing. And I love being part of a startup.
Yeah.
I love being part of a very different way. I mean, it's just been a lot of fun.
That's fantastic. Thank you for being with
Thank
us,
you.
Ellen. Thank you so much.